Mike and I did our presentation on unusual attitudes and unusual attitude recovery and its need for additional training. For the purposes of this presentation, we're looking at the unexpected and that comes as a result of being distracted. We're concerned with the extreme attitudes that can be dangerous if not dealt with properly, not the mundane or the relatively benign, which occurs in flight from time to time. But this comes as a result of improper control inputs and misinterpreting the aircraft's attitude or unpredicted or unseen force, such as wind shear or wake turbulence. And it's going to include overbanking, stalling, spins, over pitching, inverting, or any combination thereof. And this loss of control in flight, or LOCI, it accounts for more fatalities than any other causal factor in aviation. So it should be taken pretty seriously. Just like many of the human factors we've discussed, this one, it's kind of flying under the radar, unfortunately, at this time, and that's why we're addressing it. And it's defined as a loss of aircraft control while or deviation from intended flight path in flight. That is one of the definitions anyway. And one of the things a pilot does that it's pretty notorious, has its own name, is the panic pull. And this is ingrained in pilots right out of the gate. You're taught to equate pulling on the yoke or the stick with climbing, and it becomes a universal reflex. And the panic pull causes a pilot to pull back on the yoke when bank angles exceed a pilot's comfort levels, getting him into further trouble. So the panic pull is part of the loss control in flight that needs to be addressed to break that reflex or that habit and overcome it when you shouldn't be. You shouldn't put that control input in. And our big thing is the current inadequate training. And there's just a lack of training on this, given that it's the number one causal factor of fatalities and accidents. There are some recent examples, the Colgan air crash, which actually triggered an attempt at some legislation that, in our opinion, was needed. We'll go into that here in just a little bit. First, we'll look at what the big boys are doing. We follow, in general aviation, we follow the big airlines and the military in any number of cases. And in this case, the air carriers need to be doing more. They're not doing enough training, recognizing that this is an area that we need to improve upon. Whoops. And many offer training, and much of that training can just be in a simulator, unfortunately. And it's our feel that you really need to be up in the air and you need to experience the sensation and work on it in the real environment, not just the simulator, although the simulator can help. So that Colgan air crash triggered Congress to put out HR 3371, which may have had some things in it that were the cause of its demise. I don't know. I didn't read the whole bill. What we do know is it was going to force the FAA's hand to have some proceedings to recognize this field and mandate some ground and flight training to combat unusual attitude situations and their subsequent successful recoveries. But it died on the Senate floor for some reason. So thank you, Washington, for that. There's been no new attempts that we could find to resurrect it in any other form. And so as of now, the answer to new regulations is in this realm, no, there is not. So some causal factors, they've pinpointed the pilot, as usual, as the primary factor in most accidents, pilot error. And three key elements influencing that pilot are distraction, faulty perceptions, and inappropriate control inputs. Some other factors that lead to unusual attitudes are automation, confusion, environment, wake vortices, and systems induced. And so once again, we're back at the pilot, just as the human factors class has been pounding into us. And so we need to get some additional training in place to combat this. In conclusion, Again, it causes more fatalities than any other causal factor. The pilot is the major cause, and the most effective way to address this is with some advanced training. And it needs to improve, it needs to be recurrent, and we need to change the culture a little bit as far as this goes. And we know there's going to be expense, and that's probably one of the barriers here, one of the blocks, but it hopefully will improve over time. We put a link to a YouTube video that shows some actual training. It's a pretty good video. It's on the last slide if you're interested. And that is our presentation. Thanks.